Hey, my name is Beau. I'm a musician and music teacher, and on this channel, I talk about ideas to help you learn how to practice better, how to finish your musical projects, and how to enjoy your adventure as a musician. So, in this video, I want to talk about intrinsic motivation and how you can increase your intrinsic motivation as either a musician or music teacher. You can apply this to things outside of music, but I've applied this with my own practicing and teaching career. So, when we talk about intrinsic motivation, we're really talking about the sensation that you want to do something. And so, take for example, we have like two piano students. We have one who's very intrinsically motivated. Say they go to school for whatever, 6 or 7 hours. They come home, they can't wait to get to the piano and work on that new thing. Their parents have to pull them away from the piano so that they do their homework or eat dinner or something like that. And they just can't wait to get back to it. Maybe when they're at school or they're walking to school, they're thinking of the little things that they're working on. I mean, they're basically all in on music. They just can't wait to do it. And then while they're doing it, they're having a blast. They're having fun. And we could call that kind of the very positive, romantic example of someone being intrinsically motivated. And we can juxtapose that with somebody who's not intrinsically motivated, who is also studying piano, but it's a lot more work with them. It's like pulling teeth. They're kind of having to force themselves to practice. They're not getting a lot of enjoyment while they're sitting at the keyboard or whatever instrument. They're kind of watching the clock. They're thinking about other things while they're practicing. Their minds, wandering and in other places. And, I think traditionally people kind of act like you just either like something or you don't. And I think this is kind of the inspiration or the intention that a lot of parents have, which I think is a good intention to let their kids try a bunch of activities. Okay, Timmy's gonna try playing soccer, piano, kickboxing, coding class, and we'll just let him do whatever he wants to do. If he likes kickboxing more than piano, screw it. He can do kickboxing. We don't really care. Obviously, not all parents are like that. Some parents try to structure things a lot more and have like more of a balance where there's like a musical education and there's a sport and all that kind of stuff. But I would say a lot of parents in general, they have this attitude like you just kind of like doing things. And if you like them, it's worth pursuing. And that's a way of looking at psychology and a way of doing things. And I have nothing wrong with that. But there is actually more helpful ways, I would say, to look at intrinsic motivation so you can manipulate it. And so I think a lot of people think that, again, you either just like something or you don't. It's almost like a match made in heaven. Either this activity is kind of it's like your hobby soulmate, or it's not. And so I'm not saying if you dislike opera music, you should for some reason try to make yourself like it. That's not what I'm getting at here at all. But what I'm saying is that say you like the piano or guitar or music or whatever, and you wanted to know like, is there any way I could be more intrinsically motivated? Are there any levers or dials that I could kind of pull on or tweak to make this a more enjoyable time and make this a little easier? And I think the answer is yes. And so there is a pair of psychologists who developed this theory called self-determination theory. Richard Ryan and Edward Deci, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Anyways, they came up with this theory, self-determination theory, and I'm just gonna do kind of like a very kind of run-of-the-mill basic version of it. If you're interested in this, you should go look these guys up. They're serious academic researchers. It's a wonderful theory. But anyways, it kind of explains how intrinsic motivation especially, develops and is nurtured and grown. And so we have intrinsic motivation, which is kind of this natural just desire to do something and this enjoyment of doing something for the sake of doing something. And they talk about there being three essential nutriments or influencers that kind of positively influence or help grow your intrinsic motivation. And so the first one is having meaningful relationships and social connections. And so if I think about my own musical history, the high school I went to had a wonderful band director, wonderful music program, and specifically guitar players, because my band director was an amazing guitar player, an amazing guy, and it created this community in my high school. There was a bunch of crazy guitar players walking around the halls, and everyone was like pretty good at guitar. And if you were a guitar player, what this meant is you had a bunch of friends that played guitar, and you had a never-ending kind of network of people that you could talk to and that were supporting you. You know, someone could show you how to do something that you couldn't do, and then you could also help someone else, and you also had peers who were all kind of the same level. And that network with these really high quality relationships in relation to being a guitar player, it made you want to play guitar more. And I think a lot of music programs like the Suzuki method that has students playing in groups, you know, there's lots of these. I'm not going to name many more specific examples, but teachers that really kind of know what's going on, they have an ability to kind of create these social networks, and that can really supercharge people's playing. I think a lot of musicians who go to university for music, doesn't jazz, classical, pop music, doesn't even matter. I think a lot of the benefit they are getting from the university is not even the specific knowledge they are learning at that university. They are just being put in a social environment that they can kind of feed off of, and that's supporting them to pursue that activity. You know, human beings are very social creatures. We have this gregariousness. We have this desire to kind of be involved in social networks. And it's not surprising that when you have friends and you have people that are supporting you to pursue a musical instrument, you end up being more intrinsically motivated. And it's hard to simulate this. I mean, if you are a music teacher and you see your student once per week, you are doing a lot to give them a bit of a musical community, but I don't think that's enough to help saturate someone with the pure benefit you can get from this. And so, you know, I have musical friends that I chat with all the time, and I'm sending messages to or sharing ideas with, and it makes the experience much more enjoyable and much more positive. So that's the first nutriment to enhancing your intrinsic motivation. Even if you're a music teacher, not a musician, if you're a music teacher and you want to feel more connected to being a music teacher, find friends that are music teachers. Have great conversations with them. Send emails to music teachers that that you admire. You'd be surprised how often even semi-famous music teachers would respond to your emails if you just send them an email. So we have the social connection or the relationships. The next part is autonomy. And so this is a really interesting phenomenon. When people have the ability to make choices in relation to what they do, they tend to be more intrinsically motivated with what they're doing. So say, for example, I'm studying classical music. Say I want to be a classical guitarist. And let's say, again, we have two different kinds of situations here. Let's say I have a teacher that forces me to learn these exact songs. I get no say in it. This teacher forces me to learn these songs. I have to practice them this way. I have to practice them for this much time. Everything is very structured, very regimented, and it's kind of over the top. It's micromanaged. Now let's say I have another guitar teacher who's also a very good teacher. He gives me the structure I need, but there's a lot more options. Say instead of having to learn these 3 pieces this year, I can choose between 15, or I can choose between 10. Or say in my practice sessions, if I want to do 5 minutes of each of 3 pieces a few times in a row, rather than doing each piece for 15 minutes, that's fine. That's up to me. Maybe there's a way I like to phrase this passage. Maybe I like to make this, the phrasing on this passage, you know, start piano and just grow in volume. But maybe if I had a controlling guitar teacher or more of a micromanaging guitar teacher, I would be more controlled into phrasing it into a certain way. And so you can go on and on with examples like this, but human beings, they like making choices. You know, we like to make choices. We like to have autonomy over our learning. And a big part of being an effective music teacher and an effective practicer, if you are a dedicated musician that's just watching this video to learn how to practice better, learn how to manage your time better, finish your project better, knowing how to give yourself choices while keeping structure online is a really it's an important balancing act that you have to learn, because autonomy or autonomy support, in the way that they talk about it in self-determination theory, it doesn't say that you should just do whatever you want. It's not saying, well, don't make a plan to practice, don't make a plan for what pieces to learn, just wake up and do whatever you feel like doing, and that's going to make you more intrinsically motivated. That's not what the research shows, from what I understand, and that's not what's recommended by Richard Ryan and Edward Deci and the self-determination theory community at large. But there is a difference between autonomy support, or someone that's autonomy supportive, versus someone that's controlling. We can feel when someone is arbitrarily controlling us and making us do certain things. We don't like it. We naturally kind of rebel against it. And so this is actually mind-blowing if you are a music teacher. If you think about all the little ways you can introduce more autonomy to your students, give your students a genuine feeling of them being able to make decisions. I always kind of do with my students, I choose one, you choose one. So I say, okay, I want to choose the first piece that we're working on. We're going to work on bars 1 to 4 of this piece. Let's go. Let's do it. And then, we work on that for 5 minutes or something. And they say, okay, what do you think we should work on? Should we keep working on this piece or should we move to the next part? And, when you have a super beginner student, they're not really going to be able to contribute very intelligently, but you can still give them choices. Even if they're, a little arbitrary, you're showing them the respect that they're a human being that has preferences. And that's what I think autonomy support really is about. It's about showing somebody that, you're here to help them. You're here to help them grow as a teacher or friend or whatever you are to this other musician. And you're not just trying to arbitrarily control what they can do. You're trying to let them make choices and get in there. And one of the most obvious ways you could do this is let people choose what pieces they work on. If they work on a piece for 2 weeks and they don't like it, don't make them work on it for another 2 weeks. Let them do something else. And, you have to be a little mindful about this. You can't, if a student's always hopping from piece to piece to piece and they're never kind of finishing something and mastering something, that's another problem. But I think a lot of what happens is that people are either too micromanagey in their teaching, or the floodgates of just do whatever you want are open and there's no structure at all. And so you need to learn how to balance autonomy support with structures that are supportive but not oppressive or micromanagey. And yeah, it's so intuitive once you see this, but you would be surprised. A lot of teachers, they're not taking advantage of this, when they're teaching. And a lot of musicians aren't taking advantage of this. If you wake up one morning, you might have a structure that you use to set up your practice session, but what if one day you just feel like improvising for like 5 minutes here or there? It's unlikely that that's going to be a bad use of your time. And so you can even allow yourself to have some freedom. It's not like it's a binary. It's like you're super organized and structured and you hate practicing, or you just let yourself do whatever you want and it's just, it's intrinsic motivation and tubs of ice cream until you're sick of it. Those kind of binary categories are really not helpful for learning how to practice and learning how to be a good teacher. So that's kind of the autonomy support. The last section, and I'll try to cover this fast so this isn't super long. The last section is on competence. And so the theory states that you getting good at something actually increases your enjoyment in doing it and your interest in doing it. So, which is interesting. So it increases you're looking forward to doing it. So say you're out somewhere and you're like, oh, I really want to go home and play piano. That'd be a great time. It'll increase your ability, your interest in wanting to do it, but it will also increase your intrinsic motivation while you're literally playing the piano. So if you're good at playing something and you're just like, man, I'm killing this, I'm right on this passage today, it's gonna feel good. It's enjoyable to do and to engage with, and that's what leads to flow states. And Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's work, if you haven't read his book Flow, or at least listen to a summary of it, you should, because it's a wonderful mental model that really sits in nicely with this. But the essence of this is that people actually like to do things that they are good at, and it's not just a nice thing. And so I don't think this is really revolutionary in the sense that people like to do things they're good at. I don't think that's a newsflash for most people. But what is interesting is that you can actually manipulate this and control this so that you can make yourself enjoy something more. And so this has a lot of implications for how you practice, and if you're a teacher, how you teach. But you don't want to be forcing people to do things that are so difficult they can't handle them. You want to be setting things up. So it's like a video game. A video game in the sense that there's a sequence to the activities that you're going to learn. Not like a video game in the sense that it's gamified and there's points being given. I'm not necessarily advocating that. But what I'm saying is a good practice structure or a good curriculum, it will make it so things are easy, and then it slowly rises. And, the time you're spending practicing, you're able to achieve things. You sit down and say, okay, I'm going to work on this little... Let's say you worked on, improvising, or if that was a phrase you were memorizing from a song, you need a tangible goal that you can actually achieve. If you have to sit down and work on something for half an hour, or an hour before it sounds better, that's not going to give you the jet fuel that you need to be intrinsically motivated. You need little tiny goals, like maybe I don't like the way I played the B note there. And you'll notice if you watch people that are really good at practicing or just in a flow state while they're practicing, they are very dialed into super small micro things. They're like, I don't like the way that note is. I don't like the way this is. And they're rapidly finding solutions to things. They're experimenting. They're like, okay, I'm going to try it like this. I'm going to try it like this. Bang, I got it. Next. I'm going to try it like this. I'm going to try it like this. Bang, the next thing. It's not like a half an hour of banging your head against the wall and then you're like, oh, now I can do it. And you can see that's not how video games are set up. One of the interesting things about looking at video games for this kind of thing is that video games will fail unless people enjoy playing them. So if people don't play the video game, people won't buy the video game and it will disappear from the market. And so video game designers actually have a vested interest in learning about psychology so that they can set games up so that people are successful with them. I mean, I think when this is done, I don't think this is done maliciously, but they're just trying to make people feel successful so that they'll want to play the game. My wife and I played a video game recently, Overcooked 2, which was one of the funnest games I've played in a long time, but it just had genius sequencing. It started very simple. The first few levels were easy, then it slowly got more complicated. And that's what you need to do with your own practice. That's what you need to do if you're a music teacher. You need to spoon feed people things so that they get a feeling of competence, like they're making some kind of progress. And so that, in a nutshell, is self-determination theory, those three things. And you can go through this with many different parts of your musicianship. So for example, say you're a jazz musician and you're really just on the ball in terms of chord progressions, soloing over chords and stuff like that, but your rhythm is not where you want it to be. So you could actually be like very intrinsically motivated to study chord progressions and harmonic content, but not as intrinsically motivated to study rhythm. And so you can actually double down on, you can take what self-determination theory is saying and run through a little exercise. Well, do I have any friends that I talk to rhythm about? Do I have any support system that makes rhythm a social thing? Am I talking to human beings about rhythm? Do I have any of that? Am I giving myself autonomy? Am I saying I have to learn these rhythms? Do I have things to choose from? Do I have different ways of practicing rhythm? Do I have a little conga drum? Do I have like little different rhythmic exercises? You need things that you can do that give yourself a feeling of autonomy and choice. Do I have a sense of competence? Do I actually have a rhythmic curriculum or set of practices that makes me feel like I'm accomplishing something, that makes me want to show up to the practice room? And what's interesting is if you run through these things and you find, well, no, I don't have any friends that I talk to rhythm about. No, I don't have really any autonomy. I don't even know where I could begin. What are my options? I don't have a drum set. I don't have a congas. What can I do here? And I don't have a curriculum or plan to get better at something. It makes perfect sense why you're not intrinsically motivated. So again, like I said earlier in the video, I'm not saying use this to make yourself like opera. If you don't like opera, that's fine. You can just not like opera. But you can also be in the situation where you want to be more interested in working on rhythm, but you're actually not that intrinsically motivated right now to work on rhythm. And by doing little exercise and thought experiments and just tweaking a couple things in your life, you can actually kind of help your mind get more interested in something. And it's really fascinating if you experiment with this. So if you're a music teacher, this should give you lots of things to think about. But same thing if you're a musician, this can give you lots of things to think about for your own practice sessions. So that's self-determination theory in a nutshell. As it applies to some musical examples, it's a really wonderful theory. Recommend you go learn more about it. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and have a wonderful day.